Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session. I'm Adam Barazin from MSDW, and today's event is sponsored by our friends over at Coffee and Done. So before we get started, I just want to touch on a couple of things. The first is that if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and one of our presenters will get back to you after the session ends. The second thing is that we are recording the session, and we should have it up on the site the day after it airs. So without further delay, Jess, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Adam. All right, everyone, let's get right into it. So today's presentation is called Inbox or Ignored. It's all about navigating deliverability in Dynamics 365 customer insights journeys. So let's get started. Let's start with two numbers. The first, 1 in 6. So 1 in 6 emails are sent to valid addresses from legitimate brands, but land in spam. And they're not being bounced, they're not being blocked, they're being delivered, but immediately buried where nobody really looks. Now, the second number I'd like to point out is 31 billion, and that's the number of emails that bounce every single day. So here's the thing about those statistics. It's not happening to bad senders. It's happening to good ones, brands that have strong content, real opt-ins, and genuine audiences. But because deliverability isn't a judge of your marketing quality, it's actually a judge of your technical signals, your sending behavior, and your list health. And so that's why this is happening to good senders. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure we're all speaking the same language. Delivery means your email reached its destination. Deliverability means that it reached the inbox, not spam. So if you send 1,000 emails and have a 90% deliverability rate, that means 990 land where people actually see them. But that gap between delivered and inbox placed is where revenue lives or dies. So email is still, by almost every measure, the highest ROI channel in digital marketing. Your list is an asset that belongs to you, not to Meta, not to LinkedIn, not to whatever platform changes their algorithm next quarter. That ownership is real and it matters. But owning the list doesn't mean that you actually own the inbox too. And that distinction is exactly what we're here to talk about today. So when I think about deliverability problems I see in CIJ, on the regular, they're not technical failures. They're more like configuration gaps or settings that were never touched, signals that weren't checked, or lists that just weren't cleaned enough. The platform has tools, but they just don't use themselves. So by the time we're done here today, you're going to have a much clearer picture of what's happening inside your CIJ environment. And you'll also leave with a short list of things you can act on this week. So let's get into it. We'll talk through what we're going to discuss today. So the first thing we'll talk about are those current challenges in email deliverability and where we see CIJ customers having difficulties. Then we'll get into the impact deliverability has on revenue and take a look at some CIJ specific impacts. Finally, we'll wrap up with a short list of high impact fixes you can start working on this week. Now, again, our goal today is for you to leave this webinar feeling informed and empowered with approachable action items you can put into practice. Before we get too deep, allow us to introduce ourselves. I'm Jessica Skinner. I'm digital lead at Coffee and Done. I've spent nearly 15 years in digital marketing with email at the core of most of it. In my role, I work directly with organizations using Dynamics 365 customer insights journeys, and I help them get more out of the platform and build email programs that actually perform for them. What I find in my work is deliverability is one of those areas that tends to fly under the radar until something goes really wrong. And that's exactly what we're here to fix today and why Andy is here to discuss with us. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy. Currently, I'm Deliverability Manager at Zero Bounce. My past roles were inside Microsoft Dynamics Customer Insights Journey. I was deliverability lead, anti-abuse lead, and ISP relation manager on Dynamics. I joined Dynamics over 8 years ago when it was serving around 100 customers and sending 10,000 emails per month. And now they are sending in billions. I wear many hats, and I was as well point of contact for all customers using Microsoft Dynamics, and I was assisting everyone which needed help in analyzing their sending patterns and resolving any kind of deliverability related issues when using customer insight journey.
Yep, you're a pro. I know I reached out to you plenty of times. So let me tell you more about Coffee and Done. Coffee and Done delivers AI-ready revenue engines that fuel growth using the Microsoft ecosystem. With over 12 years as a partner with Microsoft, we go beyond traditional CRM projects by combining strategy, process, data, and AI with technology so that we're creating connected revenue systems that drive growth, velocity, and retention. Our plan, build, run framework and deep expertise in Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Azure AI, and Copilot enables companies to improve customer engagement. So that's a bit about us. Andy, I'll let you tell us some more about Zero Bounce.
Okay. Zero Bounce is currently the #1 email validation service, which serves over 500,000 customers. However, beside only being an email validation tool, we are also offering a suite of other features which can and are very helpful for monitoring and improving your deliverability, not only your delivery. Zero Bounce has a very good tool called Inbox Placement, which monitors your placement at different ISPs. As well, we are offering deliverability consultancy as a service. So anyone which has a deliverability problem, engagement drop, or any kind of questions regarding deliverability or want to enhance their sending program, they are free to reach out to Zero Bounce.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. So let's get right into our discussion, starting with the current state of affairs. Now, there's no doubt that there's been a shift in email deliverability. And with the introduction of AI-driven inboxes, it's become more challenging than ever, I would say. Andy, in your experience working with clients, what are the key changes you've seen over the past few years? How has email deliverability evolved?
Yeah, it was really easy in the past, meaning that ISPs, because when you are talking about deliverability, you need to think from an ISP point of view. You need to think exactly how Gmail is looking at traffic, how Microsoft is looking at traffic, and how they're analyzing you as a sender in order to assess if you are going to the inbox, if you are getting accepted first, and then your placement, if you are going to the inbox or the spam box. In the past, the most important data point they had, it was IP reputation. So basically, if you are sending from a good reputable IP, or you are using a dedicated IP and you had really good sending practices, then you had a guarantee that you are going to the inbox. Currently, there is a shift to domain reputation. Infrastructure counts, but it's not that important as before. Now, the most important is your domain reputation, because all ISPs are creating a fingerprint of you as a sender. So basically, all of your actions are being categorized. They are just data points for them, and they will create a fingerprint which is being used to determine if they accept your emails and as well the placement. So this is why currently the old fix, change the platform, change the IP, no longer works. Even if you are changing IPs, you are changing platforms, even if you are going on a subdomain, your fingerprint will, or you are moving to another domain, you will still have that fingerprint all over the web, and all of the ISPs will be using it to determine your, let's say, reputation and your history. This has made things harder for senders and much more complex. They need to make sure that they respect all of the guidelines from these major ISPs, because they have enforced stricter rules for authentication. They have enforced stricter rules for compliance, and not playing by their rules means that you'll not get accepted, you'll be rejected, and or you'll get placed in the spam box.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Before it sounds like it was very much IP focused, but now there are several factors that are coming into play. So now that we know more about why we've seen these changes, let's dive a little deeper and start talking about where we see CIJ customers struggling. So first, I really want to emphasize that if your deliverability isn't where you want it to be right now, it usually means that there are a handful of gaps that have developed quietly over time as your sending volume grew and your platform evolved. Now, you haven't just made one massive mistake here, and the fact that you're here with us today is a huge first step in getting things right. So let's talk about what the deliverability patterns we see often are. So starting with the first one, bounce suppression without list cleanup. So Andy, I think this one is a common misconception for folks because they assume they have automatic bounce suppression in CIJ. That's perfectly fine. That's enough. That's going to cover everything. But in reality, it's a little bit more of a safety net, right? So if you think about it, that suppression kicks in after the bounce happens. So there's already been some reputation damage done. And then if you're not cleaning up those bouncers when those bounces happen, you're going to have people cycle through that suppression list. So 6 months later, after they've been released again, they're just going to bounce again, and then the cycle will start all over. So those are the typical things I see. What else do you see tripping CIJ users up here, Andy?
Yeah, a common misconception is that the suppression list is a cleaner, which in fact it's not, especially on customer insights journey, because if you have read our documentation, which I wrote it, it tells you that in CIJ, the suppression list is unique per instance for each organization. So basically, even if you have a tenant and you have 3 production environments, every production environment will have their unique suppression, and that suppression will be used only by you, the sender. We don't have Microsoft CIJ doesn't have a global suppression list. So basically, if you are targeting a known bounce address, which another customer has targeted and it already bounced, you will not benefit from that bounce. It will still trigger attempt to send, and then we'll record the bounce, and then it will go into your own unique suppression list. Microsoft CIJ did this in order to respect the GDPR laws, which are preventing data to be used between different senders.
Yeah.
This is a novelty. I don't know how many know that the suppression list is unique, because most of Microsoft competitors, they are using an approach with a global suppression list. And
yeah, that's a good call out.
As well, the expiration dates are following. So basically, the first time when we record the hard bounce, the email address goes into the suppression list. Then it has an expiration date of 7 days. The second time you attempt it, after the 7-day period, because it will be attempted again after the 7-day period, then we'll put an expiration date of 14 days. After 14 days, it will be a valid contact again. You target it again, it bounces again, get a negative signal again, and then we put 30 days on it. And afterwards, it's 90 days. And every 6 months, the whole database is being deleted and your contacts are active again. So this is why I'm always recommending to any kind of CIJ customer to proactively exclude known bouncers. meaning that once you have the capacity to create segments, behavioral segments inside customer insight journey, which will populate with emails which have hard bounce, for example. And then you can use that segment as a suppression segment. So when you are creating a customer insight a customer journey, you can inside the settings of the customer journey, you can select a suppression segment. I'm always recommended as well, use a dynamic behavior segment and exclude all of the bouncer from your customer journeys. Don't rely on the suppression list. That's a safety net. That's the part of the suppression list.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Well, let's go on to number 2, because I think this is another common misconception. So this is the assumption that as long as you're legally compliant, you'll be delivered into the inbox. Now, that's not to say that legal compliance isn't important, because it definitely is, but it's not the ultimate deciding factor for inbox placement. So, Andy, why is it that even if a sender can be fully compliant with the laws, even those stricter ones like GDPR or those that require a double opt-in, that doesn't guarantee their inbox placement? Like, what are the inbox providers actually looking for?
So yes, you can be 100% compliant and still land 100% into the spam, because this opt-in procedure is between you as a sender and your recipient, and it's just like a contract between you, the sender, and the recipient. The ISPs, they are not aware of this deal between you and your contact. They are not aware that the contact has agreed for you to send emails. There are some let's say ISPs are trying to bridge this gap of knowledge, and there are some initiatives around this. However, they are just on the inception stage, so don't rely on it. And in placement decision, compliance, this type of compliance, because compliance is really important. However, just having a double opt-in doesn't have any influence on placement only. What's really important to have double opt-in or at least a single opt-in is there is a higher probability that your contact is expecting your email, and it will search for your email inside the mailbox, and it will interact with your email because they are interested. Those are the positive signals which the ISPs are looking for, and those are the positive signals which will guarantee the inbox placement, not just the fact that you have an opt-in. So relevance is more important than compliance. First step is, of course, to get their consent. However, the relevance of your emails it trumps any kind of data point.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when we think about number 3 here, relying solely on surface level reporting, I think that one just kind of compounds the last problem a bit here. Now, for those of you watching, you may be a little thrown off by this statement because CIJ provides both journey level reporting and email insights. But the truth is the native insights are very surface level. So it's good for a baseline reporting, but it's not everything that you need. So, Andy, if CIJ's reporting is the jumping off point, what other type of reporting or analysis do modern marketers need to be looking at?
Of course, reporting in CIJ is great for high-level journey stats, but it's just a surface level because it misses the shadow signals. It misses the other important signals which you need to take a look at. Inside CIJ, my recommendation is take a very close look at the click rate, not the open rate, and of course at the bounce rate, spam complaint rate, and those are the most important data points inside customer insights journeys. Ever since Apple MPP launched, open rates have become like a vanity matrix. It's nice to have 60% open rate, but usually it's not. Even the open pixel, which is used, it's not accurate enough because there are studies and there are like studies between, for example, Yahoo and certain senders, and they discovered the discrepancy even in open pixel tracking of around 30 to 40%. So Yahoo was reporting 20% open rate, and the platform was reporting around 45% open rate. So either way, open rate is no longer a viable data point which you can use for segmentation or to analyze your sending program health. What you can use beside the reporting on CIJ, you need to understand your audience first. If you need to determine what I'm calling them like top 5 ISPs you are targeting, and usually Gmail is the biggest one. And the best data point which you can use is their Google Postmaster tool. Google Postmaster is a dashboard where you can authenticate your domain. You can verify that it's your domain, and then they will populate with a lot of data points. In the past, they had the domain reputation, IP reputation data, but they are no longer available because of version 2 has been enforced by Google, and they will show you compliance data and authentication data. It will show you if you comply with their stricter rules in regard to authentication, and it will show you, for example, spam complaint rate. They will show you if they are throttling you, for example, temporary rejections. They will show you user spam reports and all of this type of data, which by monitoring them daily, you can be proactive in determining if you have an issue at Gmail, for example. With other providers, it's very important for you to do inbox placement tests using seed list, meaning that you need to understand if you are going to the inbox or you are going to the junk. It's very important for you to determine if there is a placement problem on an early stage, because it's much easier to fix the placement problem if you catch it in the first weeks than if you catch it after several months when your customers are complaining that they don't get your emails, or your engagement rates are going down, or your revenue is going down. And you can use Zero Bounce. As I said, Zero Bounce has a great tool for B2B and B2C, where they have around over 100 email addresses split between the biggest ISPs, and you can schedule. Always, I'm recommending to customers, schedule a normal customer journey to this segment twice per week, and analyze the data. This will bring you more visibility into your health than any kind of statistics on a journey from a deliverability point of view.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you, it sounds like, okay, take what you can get from the native reporting in CIJ, but let's supplement that with some inbox placement testing, and then also setting up some of those provider-specific mailbox relays so that you can get a better sense of where you're actually landing with those mailbox providers. So let's talk a little bit about number 4. I see this a lot when I talk to clients about their marketing maturity. So a lot of times, we meet clients where they are, and sometimes that's in a very fragmented place where they're using a batch and blast approach. But as marketing organizations mature, they should start moving away from sending everything to everyone and more towards an intentional data-driven approach that involves using the data in front of them. So they're using that data and they're targeting their audiences and splitting them out more intelligently. They're adding personalized content. And if you think about it, your deliverability should really follow that same evolution or path. Another thing when I talk to my clients is I noticed a real hesitation to pare their audiences down based on click engagement. So we talked a lot about this. Open rates are pretty much a vanity metric at this point. The click is king. So I encourage my clients to start narrowing their audiences down by click engagement. And there's a real fear or scarcity mindset around this that I think people think their lists are going to be too small and they're leaving revenue on the table. But Andy, I think you'll agree here. You can actually make a lot more with those smaller lists because they're actually going to be engaged instead of just having a large list full of disengaged. So what else can you share to just kind of put some of that fear to rest, Andy?
Of course, this is the biggest fear. Smaller lists means less money. However, batch and blast is actually a revenue killer. Why I'm saying this is AI filters will create a digital fingerprint of your sending patterns. So when you suddenly spike your volume, for example, on a holiday sale, after months of low activity, you are spiking and you are sending to your whole list or your which is being done usually. For example, Microsoft filters will see this bursting behavior as a potential compromised account. They will throttle your traffic immediately. They will put those blocks on your domain, and you will not be able to reach to your audience in this case. Gmail does the same thing. I'm seeing over and over again spikes are causing the dreadful 4xx deferral bounces, which are caused by domain reputation. That means that Gmail will allow you to send just a limited number of emails per hour. So basically, you'll never reach your full audience. This means that revenue, it's exactly what you want to avoid. It's a revenue killer. Any kind of blasting to non-engaged segments and blasting to your whole database will hurt you eventually. And by sending only to an engaged core, you also can create an engagement spike. What this does is teaches the AI that your email is wanted. It will improve your sender DNA, and high engagement with a small list will eventually unlock the inbox for your larger list later. So basically, when you are getting into troubles, this is your best avenue: is slow down a little bit your sends, reduce your audience, send it to the high engagement segment only, and in this way you can recuperate even damaged reputation. And if you need to send to your whole database, do it in a more gradual way, meaning that first you target your high engagement segment and then a little bit move forward with less engaged and so on. You need to first show to the ISP that you are sending wanted email, and then they will be more lenient when they will see your other campaigns, let's say.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And what I love about that is that there is still a way to remedy if you're having any of these troubles. So that's the last thing I wanted to add here is that the good news is we have found ways to fix every single one of these struggles. And that's what we're going to really focus on throughout the rest of the presentation here today. So, you mentioned it earlier, Andy. I think we would be totally remiss if we didn't talk about that direct relationship between deliverability and revenue. So, Andy said it perfectly. If you are sending to disengaged lists, that is a direct revenue killer. And I know as marketers, we love to focus in on those channel metrics. We love to see the clicks, the conversion rate. But if you're sitting in the room with your CSO or your CRO, they're going to be focused on revenue impact over that channel performance. So when you think about inbox placement, it goes beyond the opens and clicks and conversions, right? You need to think about the fact that it directly impacts your pipeline velocity, your conversion rates, your retention. because like we have here, there's this 20% rule. So if only 20% of your emails are going to spam, what happens to the CTAs that are in those messages, right? Those are not getting clicked. This can look like your attendance for events are going down, your renewal campaigns don't get the same traction, your sales follow-ups aren't hitting the same. And it's really a chain reaction if you think about it. So I think our big takeaway here for you all is that there is a direct relationship between your deliverability and your revenue. If you're following best practices and you have good deliverability, that's just going to help you maximize your revenue opportunities. However, on the flip side of that, if you get into trouble with your deliverability, it's going to have a very negative impact on your revenue, not only in those like initial things like lost revenue opportunities, a decrease in revenue, but then you also have to think about the costs to reacquire people and put them back into your list. So, I said it before, I think you really need to think about your email list as a very precious resource and treat it like one. So when you have this list of people, you really want to treat it well. You want to follow best practices because if you do lose people to things like shadow churn, for example, trying to reacquire those customers can become very costly, and that obviously cuts into your revenue as well. So, now that we kind of talked about how this can really impact your revenue, I'd love to shift gears and take a look under the hood at some of those CIJ specific factors that come into play around deliverability. So we'll start with content. And I want to walk through each of the 4 clients here because they all judge your emails differently. So starting with Gmail, this is going to be your most engagement-driven mailbox. It's watching whether people open, click, and engage with your emails. And it uses that behavior to decide whether your send goes to the primary tab, promotions, or straight to spam. How else is Gmail judging us, Andy?
Tabs. Tabs is
so the biggest thing.
Very discussed topic. I want to make it clear that tabs are still inside the inbox. The spam box doesn't have tabs. Only the inbox has tabs. And usually Gmail is very good at interpreting the intent and of the content and what the sender wants to relate to the recipients. And if they are seeing any sense of a commercial offering, they will put it inside the promotional, and the promotional tab was designed for such purposes. Meaning that if you are sending from a marketing platform, that's a sign of a promotional email. If you are using tables, if you are using more than one link, even multiple links, if you are using lists, unsubscribe, there are so many data points which Gmail is using to determine if it's a promotional tab or not, or it's a promotional content or not. Then you have the social tab, you have the updates tab, newsletter tab. What is the good news is that recent reports have mentioned that there is a tendency of users not really to use those tabs anymore because they are kind of annoying sometimes. And that over 50% of the users which are using tabs will check the promotional tab at least once per day. So your emails are not lost. They are being used by users. And another good news is that there are no tabs on mobile. So if your audience is mainly checking your emails in mobile, then there are no tabs and you don't need to worry either way. You don't need to worry about where it lands because, as I said, tabs are only inside the inbox.
Very good. And so thinking about mobile, we also have Apple Mail, which a lot of those users tend to be mobile users. So I think one of the most important judges here is how well or easily your content displays on a mobile device. So here you want to think about optimizing for dark mode and making sure that like your content appears above the fold, like you have the relevant call outs all present above the fold. And I think just the kind of point here is like, if you are not optimizing for mobile, the result could be that if your email doesn't display well, it's not friendly to the mobile user, they're going to just either delete it or mark it as spam. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen. That tells the inbox, this is trash. Let's go on to Outlook. So I know Outlook is notorious for HTML rendering. But another thing I would call out is that if you're in the B2B space, you always want to test your Outlook because more than likely your customers are using Outlook to view your emails. And if your customers are large financial entities, for example, you're likely working against some additional layers of security protocols. And so it may be even harder to get that visibility. Does this align with what you're seeing when it comes to Outlook, Andy?
Yes, Outlook is a little bit difficult to set it up and to customize your content. And the problem here is that you have different judges and you have only one content. You cannot. Right. You can, but usually you have just one HTML for all of them. So it's really important to have someone specialized inside your team, which can use the tools available to create the perfect HTML for all of these judges. And luckily, inside customer insight journeys, we have such tools.
Yeah, that's a great point, Andy. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So the first thing that you can use to help you better understand where people are interacting with your emails, where they're seeing your emails, is the email insights. So you'll get to see the top devices and browsers based on the click engagement that it's tracking. So that's a good first start, just to get a better sense of who your audience is so that you can start optimizing for that. And then in addition to that, you can use the native litmus integration to really get a good idea of how your messages are viewing on those different email clients. So again, like, this is great for trying to mobile optimize and optimize for dark mode too. Okay. So let's go on to the next factor. This is all about the AI-driven inboxes that we did talk quite a bit about earlier, but I think it's worth pointing out that, you know, this is there and it's here to stay. So Andy, you're on the battlefield each day. What are you seeing when it comes to the impact AI has on these major inboxes?
Yes, AI is changing things for sure, and it will change things in the future. Again, they are much better at analyzing your content. They are much better of let's say not understanding, but catch you if you are trying to bend a little bit the rules. Currently, they have native language, like native programming language, which can even text inside your images. So that's a good point, good thing, because if you are doing everything correctly and you believe that images are a little bit much nicer for the end user, you can increase a little bit the ratio between text and there is in the past everyone was recommending just plain text used, avoid images. Right now AI is smart enough to understand underneath an image what it is and to see it as a safe place. As well, AI will understand your intent and your let's say it will determine very fast if you want, let's say, you need to be very careful of your wording when creating content. AI will be very sensitive to anything which relates to some kind of urgency in your content. any kind of action which is required from the recipient side in a very short time, and it will add all of those signals to the fingerprint which I was talking about. And the content is just part of that fingerprint. I'm a very big fan of marketeers. I'm always champion for them to create, let's say, content which will drive positive signals, which will drive interest from the end users, which will drive them to spend more time with it. And those are the positive signals which also AI will be looking at, because AI will mostly focus on exactly the interactions of the recipient with the content itself, with the email itself. And it will also analyze the interactions. If they are deleting the email after 1 second, if they are moving the email from one folder to another folder, if they are skimming the email and then closing it, it's all, you need to think positive versus negative signals. And the AI is much better interpreting and analyzing them and putting them into a score, a fingerprint and a score. And that will follow you everywhere you go.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point about giving it signals, right? And so one of the ways that you can work with the AI, since it is in some cases replacing what you provide as subject lines and pre-headers as it's putting its own summary together. One of the things you can do here is always include pre-header text. Now, it's not a requirement from CIJ when you're building the email, but this can be a really powerful way to work with the algorithm instead of against it. And so if you're giving a clear contextual text for your pre-header, and then if you have some more relevant text at the first 1 or 2 lines of your email, that's really going to give the AI-driven inboxes some context and signals about what the message is and that it is inbox worthy. So even though it might get replaced, don't skip this part of the email build process. Think of it more as like a way to just tell the AI what your goal is. It's just another data point that the AI is collecting here.
As well, there are studies that show that this type of pre-header will increase open rates because it provides context. The subject line is one thing which is limited. It cannot be longer. However, by adding preview text, it will provide context even for these AI scanners. And then a well-written pre-header will make your email look a little bit more human, legit. So basically, users will see a clear summary instead of a broken text. If there is no preview text, maybe, or things can go wrong with HTML.
Of the image, I see that sometimes. That's the pre-header is like the alt text of the image because that's the first thing in the email.
And as well, it improves accessibility because there are users with visual impairments which are using screen readers, and the pre-header is often read immediately after the sender and the subject line, and they can understand better the purpose of the email. Going through
that's
the
a
whole
really good call out. Yeah, accessibility, very good consideration with all of this. Let's go on to the next factor. So factor 3 is probably going to be the most surprising because it has nothing to do with your content, your list, or your authentication setup. It's more about how your journeys are actually configured. So here's the thing about CIJ that's very easy to overlook. Every journey configuration decision you make is also a sending behavior decision. So inbox providers, like we said, they can't see the compliance, they can't see your journey logic. All they see are just the patterns of emails coming from your domain. So if that pattern looks bulk, erratic, or repetitive sending, it gets treated accordingly. So let's walk through the 4 most common journey configuration issues that we see. And I'd love for you to tell us from your perspective why these can be so detrimental to deliverability. First, we have repeat settings. So depending on how your journey is configured, like I know by default, your trigger-based journeys are going to automatically set to repeat immediately if someone actions that trigger. This can come across, with a very quick repeat or immediate repeat, can trigger and look like multiple of the same email being sent to somebody. So what does that type of pattern tell the inbox, Andy? Like if they're getting the same email over and over?
I can share an example from Zero Bounce, meaning that we have a seed list inside inbox placement. Inside the inbox placement test, we have like a seed list. We constantly add more email address to that seed list. We had a trigger, which every time when an email was added, an email was sent, like a notification, which it's a transactional, should be a really good email. However, it was triggered by each individual email address which was added. So basically, if we're adding like 20 email addresses, 20 emails were sent to our customer. So imagine you as a user getting 20 emails. You want to get rid of those because those are annoying, and you either not answer. Usually, annoyed recipient, annoyed end user will press the spam button faster than doing absolutely anything, than creating a filter or than creating absolutely anything. So basically, that's the danger of this trigger-based journeys. If the same email is being received multiple times, it can trigger an unsubscribe, it can trigger like a spam complaint, and it can trigger, even if it triggers just the deletion of that email, is a strong negative signals.
Right. I think that's a great point, and it kind of leads into the issue we see with concurrent journeys. So that is also a risk you run. If you're running simultaneous journeys throughout CIJ for different purposes, like a lead nurture or a newsletter, all of those are sending at the same time, and there's a risk that a single contact could qualify for all of them at once. So in this case, you're seeing, multiple emails in a small time frame coming from your domain to that person, which, Andy, that seems like that could be just as detrimental, right?
I've seen cases where you are a brand with, you are a company with multiple brands, and you have a user which is being signed for multiple brands, and then you do a concurrent journey, and it will create an email for each one, and you end up with 20 emails, 10 emails, 5 emails from the same sender, different senders, however, from the same brand. And as again, even the deletion of that email is something which we need to avoid. So pay attention to concurrent journeys and the audience of those journeys.
Yeah. And then, another two that people may not always be aware of right away. So the first is just having a large segment go out all at once, kind of giving that volume spike that the senders don't like to see. So that one can also be pretty harmful. And then the other issue, it's a lot like the repeat settings in that you're going to see multiple of the same email go to the same email address. But here, this can happen when you have some duplicate contacts in your list and you haven't enabled the deduplication feature. So, Andy, I know both of those can also be pretty harmful to your reputation as well.
Especially volume spikes. Those are very sensitive for ISPs, because if you are reading their recommendations, they're always championing for go steady. Send the same kind of volumes over time, as frequent as you can, avoid spikes. So basically what happens when there is a spike, the ISP will immediately react. It doesn't matter if there are opt-ins, if they are weighted, because there are different stages of filtering. So on the first stage, they will analyze the sender reputation, the IP reputation, but they will analyze as well the frequency and the pass volumes. So if you are coming from a 50K to 150K, then you need to pay attention, because most likely Gmail will throttle you, Microsoft will throttle you and penalize the IP and domain. So you'll get into a lot of problems. When you have like a huge segment to send through, split it.
Yes.
Split it in multiple customer journeys. Recommendable is to split it over multiple days.
Okay.
One tomorrow, one the next day. You can do the throttling on the application side, but it's more safe to just segment it and send it in different days. What Microsoft CIJ does, they do some type of throttling based on your audience. However, don't rely on that. It is just mostly for the platform reputation, to protect the platform reputation, not your domain reputation. So, and they are not looking at you as a sender. They will look at the overall traffic. So, if you are spiking and others are spiking, they will slow down a little bit the traffic, because they don't want to have these spikes in volumes. So this is done automatically by the platform, but don't rely on it. As I said, do a proper segmentation and plan it accordingly.
Yes, and so there, to that point, there's a couple of different ways I want to highlight for you to control for these types of issues we see. So the first is just make it a best practice to go through each of your journey's re-entry settings and make sure that they match your intent. Like I said here, the repeat setting on the trigger journeys are set to immediately repeat. The next is you can enable the email deduplication feature switch in the settings area. This will help reduce that risk that you're going to have multiple contacts in the same audience that have the same email address. So if you have duplicates, this will automatically scrub out the duplicate and just send one email through. Then also, I want to highlight the frequency cap. So this is going to help make sure that you set a ceiling for your daily, weekly, and monthly volumes. So once someone has already met that cap for the day, they no longer will receive any more emails that day, and that also can help protect your deliverability. And then to Andy's point, so definitely use segmentation to target your audiences down. But then if you do end up with a large send that you need to complete, they have a split audience by title in CIJ where you can create separate branches and stagger those sends. So like he said, send them, one day at a time for those larger volumes. All right, so another factor we've touched on a lot here, so I don't think we need to go too deep, but Andy, if you had to summarize like the top 3 engagement signals, what would they be?
Yes, it will be clicks, it will be spam complaints, replies. So, and there are the invisible ones, which are very strong, but you will not know of them. There are the folder says starting, moving between folders, and the deletion, redirection. Those are invisible to us. There are products which will offer you some kind of insights on it, but by default, they are invisible to most of the marketeers. However, focus on clicks. Focus on replies, focus on for example, on purchases, on website. Maybe you can use Google Analytics and see exactly if any of your contacts are browsing your website and interacting with your website after receiving the email. So those are the best data points you can use. And from an ISP point of view, as I said, most important one is spam complaints, be under 0.1%. You can see that on customer insights journeys for every ISP except Gmail, and inside Gmail you can view it on Google Postmaster.
Yeah, that's a great point. So exactly like you said here, this is something that you can monitor in CIJ, so take advantage of those channel analytics that come out of the box.
However, be aware that Gmail is excluded from any reporting on CIJ or any other platform, because Gmail doesn't offer feedback loop processing, meaning that they will not share the email addresses of the email addresses which have pressed the spam button. Only Yahoo does that, Microsoft, and a bunch of local ISPs. But my Gmail doesn't do that. However, you can see like an overview on the spam complaint rate on Google Postmaster, and that's really important to monitor.
Great call out. Okay, so this is the part that everybody's been waiting for. Everything we've talked about up to this point has been to help us better understand the problems that senders are facing. But now we're going to talk about how you can actually solve them. So we've got 6 fixes for you, and they're sequenced intentionally. So the first ones have the highest immediate impact and the lowest barrier to entry. And then the last 2 may take a little bit more of a setup, but have a real long-term payoff. So while I'm walking through these fixes, Andy will share his insights on what's the most impactful. So my message to you is, don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to implement all 6 of these this week. Pick the one that resonates the most with you where you are right now and start there, because one well-executed fix consistently applies much better than several half-finished ones. So, pick one, run with it, and then check another one off the list. This can be a process. So without further ado, let's go and talk about these fixes. So
I apologize.
Go ahead.
My cat is requiring my attention a little bit, so you might see her.
Okay. No problem. The more the merrier. Okay, so fix number 1 is about knowing your battlefield and then actually doing something about it. So we've talked about this a few times. One of the best things a marketer can do is go and find out who their audience is. So CIJ email insights are going to give you some of those engagement signals so that you can tell where people are viewing your emails, and where those clicks are coming from, right? So that's a great way to get started, is just to go dig into those and start building that picture of who your audience is. Once you have that picture of who your audience is, you can start to optimize for it. So we've got some kind of quick hits for each of these different inbox providers here on screen. If you, with your unique vantage point, Andy, are there any standouts when it comes to optimizing for the provider? Like, obviously, people are going to need to go and find out who their biggest lion's share of their audience is coming from. But, is there anything that can kind of go across all providers? I know, like, Gmail and Yahoo, the one-click unsubscribe is very important. But anything that really stands out to you here?
Yes, as you said, one-click unsubscribe is mandatory for all of these providers and for almost everyone. The strict enforcement of this rule happened in 2024 for Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook is enforcing this by end of April, so we have around 7 days. Luckily, customer insights journeys already have this feature. However, it's not enforced by default. You need to go into the settings, find it, enable it. What it will do is add a header inside your emails, which will be visible next to the sending domain, to the sending domain, I believe, somewhere above. It's very easy for the customer for the recipient to unsubscribe. And as I said, it's a strong requirement from these providers, from all of them. So you'll benefit from it.
Definitely.
And this will allow you to have a full picture of exactly what's your unsubscribe rate and you'll pass all of the compliance tests, and of course will minimize the chances of them clicking the spam button or getting their
you're making it easier for people to unsubscribe, which has been shown to really have a positive impact.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go on to the next tip. Fix number 2 is about adapting to something that's already happening, whether you're ready for it or not. The AI-driven inboxes are here to stay. So Gmail's Gemini, Apple Mail, on-device machine learning, the AI categorizations from Yahoo, they're all making the same basic decision. Is this email personal and relevant, or is it commercial and bulk? And they're making that decision based on your sender name, your subject line, your first 2 lines of content, your CTA language, and your template structure. So here are a few things that should help move the needle immediately. First is to use a human sender name. So switch from something that's very generic, like your brand marketing, to a real person's name. So for example, Jessica at your brand. Gmail and Apple Mail are both going to associate primary inbox placement with human-to-human communication. So this small change could have a very meaningful impact. Second, subject lines. So think of them less as open rate drivers and more as search queries. Gmail's Gemini now lets users ask their inbox questions. So they can ask things like, what quote did I receive this week? Or if your subject line says, we have an update for you, instead of your renewal quote from your brand. So Gemini can't really work with, we have an update for you. What you want to do is just be explicit and use things like your quote, your appointment, your renewal. Third are your CTAs. So Gmail's AI is now identifying tasks inside of emails and then turning them into to-do list items. So that's another feature with Gemini. We see things like CTAs that say schedule, confirm, renew, complete. Those get highlighted by the AI and put into your to-do list, so that puts emphasis on your email. Whereas things that are vague, like a CTA that says learn more, is going to fly under the radar a bit. So make your CTAs task-based. Now, the next 3 have to do with tailoring the body of your message for AI-driven inboxes. So kicking off with key points and important messages helps get the context of your message across to the AI, so that when it creates a digest or summary view, it's going to be relevant. Also, try to only use promotional language very sparingly. Words like sale or free are going to be triggers for inbox categorization or even spam filters. So again, the AI is looking for that personal human-to-human connection when it's gauging relevance. And then it's best to also switch up your template structure. AI is going to see repetition as a promotional pattern. And then finally, encourage your subscribers to move you to primary. So once a user manually recategorizes a sender in Apple Mail or Gmail, every future email from that sender should follow the same rule. So a simple line at the bottom of your email, like add us to your contacts so you never miss an update, can permanently improve your placement for that recipient. So Andy, all of these are important, and hold a good amount of weight, but like if you were a marketer with us today and you could only focus on one first, what's the one that you would focus on the most?
I will focus on engagement. Focusing on sending to engage people, because depending on your audience, their AI works in a very different way. For example, on Gmail, their AI looks at the historical engagement, meaning that if a user has open, replied, moved email from promotional to primary, then you have a better chance of your emails landing into the primary instead of promotional. And as well, the content is, so basically Gmail as well uses that natural language processing language to read the intent of the word. So phrases like limited time offer, 20% off, will automatically trigger a promotional tab. So anything which is heavily promotional will decide that. And then if you go to Outlook, their AI checks for interaction history. So basically, you as a sender and your recipients on Outlook, they are looking to see if they have starred your messages, if they flagged it in any way, if they've done anything with it. And it's very sensitive of the, basically, they say avoid sending it to groups or mailing list aliases or those info at or this type of email addresses, because they will put it on the other tab. Because on Outlook, you have different tabs. You have the primary tab and you have the other tab. So basically, they analyzes the interaction history, and based on that, they will put it in those two different tabs. So basically, engagement will decide a lot on your behavior, because if customers will not act on your emails, it will not. They can change the for example, the AI logic very easily. This is why I like to encourage subscribers to move you to primary encouragement. So this was really nice.
I love that you brought up engagement, because that's a great segue into our next fix. So fix number 3 is one that I would say has the single most immediate impact on your deliverability, and it's something that you can entirely control in CIJ today. That is, stop mailing everybody and start mailing the right everybody. So we talked about this a bit earlier, and depending on your sales cycle, depending on the nature of your business, whether you're B2B, B2C, you may have some variance in this milestone timeline, but as a good general guideline, you want to break your audience up by their click engagement timelines. So what we see as a good rule of thumb is 30-day clickers, 30 to 60-day clickers, and 60 to 90-day clickers. So talking about each of these, the 30-day clickers, these are your most actively engaged. These are your VIPs. So you want to keep a consistent conversation going with them, keep that engagement going, because this engagement is going to do wonders for your deliverability. And to Andy's earlier point, scaling your audience down to just those who are most actively engaged really can help send positive signals to the inbox, because that engaged audience is going to be smaller, yet their engagement levels are higher, and that proportion sends such a positive signal to the mailbox, much more positive than sending to a large list full of, some really engaged folks and some who are not. Moving on to the medium engaged. Now, these are the people that might need a little bit of space, and it's probably a good idea to start checking in with them about what their preferences are. Is there a reason why we're not seeing engagement? So this would be a good time to start running like a re-opt-in campaign so that you can help get them back on track. And then the last group we have are the 60 to 90-day clickers. Now, you don't want to suppress them immediately. You want to send some sort of re-engagement campaign first and give them a genuine reason to come back. If they don't engage with that, then it's time to suppress. But Andy, would you recommend validating the emails in this group before you send that re-engagement send, like maybe with an outside tool?
Absolutely. List validation works really great with older lists, with users which haven't engaged, because most of the times they are invalid. The dangers of sending to unengaged contacts is really huge, because if anyone has decided to move away from that email address and it doesn't use this, those ISPs will be using that email. They will keep it alive. They will keep it valid, and they will use it as a spam trap.
Right.
that's designed for catching these bad senders, let's say. However, if you are not ready to if you are not ready to let them go, the ones which haven't interacted with you in 90 days, you can move them to a segment called, for example, re-engagement, as you said. And the best way to send a re-engagement campaign is together with engaged 30-day clickers. So basically, when you are targeting them, you can add into the same mix.
Right.
In the same time, you can send two customer journeys, one to engaged and one to the re-engagement, because the signals will be mixed and it will not hurt your reputation. You'll have enough engagement spike from the engaged segment that it will compensate for the re-engagement campaign.
Right,
And
kind of balance it out.
AI will understand the content, and they will understand that you are trying to re-engage them and offer them a way to stay on your list or to remove them. So it's always a positive signal.
Yes, I love that tip. Now, the next two things that are part of this tip include some standard criteria for your segments. And we alluded to this a little bit earlier, how, Andy mentioned you want to suppress the known bouncers in addition to having that system-wide suppression list. So let's talk about these a little bit. First, on the left, I've laid out the standard criteria I advise my clients to use each time they build a segment. So these first two, they are given, but we do need to make sure that we're only pulling in contacts with an email address and an active status. And then next, I like to have people layer in the consent criteria, because why pull in contacts who haven't opted in and showed an interest in your emails, right? That doesn't make sense. And then, like we said, use your safety belt. So create a suppression list or build in suppression into your segment for those known bouncers to add an extra layer of protection. So all of these things are going to help you keep your list healthy. And like we talked about before, bringing it back to the revenue of all of this, it may sound like extra work, extra effort now to go to these links, but the payoff for using these best practices is phenomenal. From a cost standpoint, it may sound expensive to use an outside tool to help scrub your list or validate emails, but the cost that you're going to pay to do that initial legwork is going to be so much less than the cost you would have to try to reacquire your mailing list. So I said it before, I'll say it again, that list is a precious resource and you need to protect it.
And the biggest expense and the biggest lost revenue is to have your reputation damaged and to start a process of regaining that reputation, because that involves reducing a lot your audience. It introduces a lot of limitations in your marketing efforts. So basically, your revenue will be at a very low level until that reputation is recuperated.
It's hard to recover from, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, yes. And speaking of reputations, that's what this next fix is all about, is setting expectations with your subscribers and then keeping those expectations. So this is all about trust, and those trust signals do wonders for your sending reputation. So this starts with the opt-in. Now, Andy mentioned there's some rumblings about maybe giving the mailbox providers insight into that deal between you and your subscribers. But until then, you really need to be super transparent and communicate exactly what your intent is when you have folks opting in. So let them know how often you're going to email them, what kind of content to expect. This really just goes beyond good manners. It's a deliverability strategy. That's because, subscribers who know what to expect are far less likely to mark you as spam when you show up in their inbox. And the inbox providers reward senders whose audiences consistently engage rather than ignore or delete them. Then once you have those expectations set up, you can use the frequency cap we showed earlier to make sure that you're keeping them. Now, I see the frequency cap as a safety net. You don't want to rely on this. This is going to catch any gaps that you may make a mistake on, but the real goal here is to earn a place in your subscribers' inbox consistently, and that starts with setting those expectations and then keeping them. So don't rely on the frequency cap. Just put those expectations and good practices into place. Andy, anything from your experience that reinforces this?
Absolutely. Your senders needs to be able to adjust preferences. They need to be able to share their feedback if they want more, if they want less, if they don't like your email, and so on. So yeah, you need to think from their point of view. They are bombarded with numerous other senders, and all of you are fighting for their attention. So
right.
Be careful of them.
Absolutely. Okay, so like I said earlier, the first few fixes are things that you can immediately put into action. And the second two, or last two here, I should say, are going to take a little bit more legwork and maybe some collaboration with your IT team, but the payoff will be very valuable. So let's start with fix number 5. This is a little different. You're not going to be able to implement this today because this involves your IT team, but I'm going to give you everything you need to walk into that conversation with IT and make a compelling case. So if you're not familiar, BIMI, or brand indicators for message identification, is essentially like a verified badge for your email. So it puts your company logo right next to your email in the inbox before the recipient even reads your subject line. Today, Gmail and Yahoo support it natively, and Apple Mail supports it too, but there's a couple of extra steps, so just keep that in mind. But the data on this is compelling. Some studies show a 5 to 10% lift in open rates from just having that logo visible. So, like Andy said, you're in an ocean competing for attention in the inbox. So having your logo visible is going to give you an edge above the others. Now, go ahead, Andy.
Gmail as well requires a VMC.
Okay.
With Apple Mail, and it's because Google has the stricter requirements, and it will not show the BIMI logo without a VMC or a CMC, which is a common mark certificate. And only the VMC will grant you the blue verified check mark in Gmail. So basically, VMC is required for Gmail.
That's a great call out. Thank you for the latest information on that. I'm so glad we have you here with us. So here's the thing that most CIJ users don't realize is that when you go through the CIJ domain authentication, you're handling SPF and DKIM, but DMARC policy is up to you to set. So since that's required for BIMI, that's something that you're going to have to handle on your end. It lives in your DNS settings, and so that's where you'll need some help from your IT. So Andy, you're an expert in deliverability. Can you break down what that process for DMARC looks like? Yes. I mean, it is a bit of a process. It takes a few weeks, but can you just kind of give us the high level summary on that?
Yes, DMARC is a complex process. However, it's a requirement. It's a requirement for a good deliverability, and it's a requirement for like an acceptance level requirement by Google and Microsoft very soon, and by Yahoo. And as well, you need to have a proper DMARC policy in order to benefit from BIMI, because if your DMARC has different policies. They have the policy none, which is being used to monitor your email flows to make sure that emails are being authenticated properly. That's for monitoring purposes. However, a PNAN doesn't mean absolutely anything for ISPs. They see you as having a DMARC. However, you will not get any positive signals by having only a PNAN, like a monitoring status. As well, BIMI requires to have either quarantine or reject, which are the two other policy on DMARC. Quarantine is instructing the ISPs to junk any kind of email which are failing SPF or the KIM, because it's not mandatory to have a pass on both of them. It's either. And on P-reject, it says reject all of the emails which are failing both SPF and the KIM. And DMARC is very important, especially for brands, to avoid being spoofed. Because without a proper DMARC policy, spoofing is very dangerous and it can ruin your reputation really fast. And it will be very hard to regain it. As a process, DMARC needs to be set on if you don't have any DMARC policy, DMARC record, you need to set it on your own. There are a lot of tools which can create the DMARC policy for you. What it involves? It involves first identifying all of the email flows, meaning that all of the platforms which are used to send out emails using your domain. That means personal mailboxes, for example, Outlook, Office, Gmail, then any kind of marketing platforms or transactional platforms or maybe automation platforms. So everyone needs to be authenticated with SPF or the KIM. Recommendable both. This is why you have this PNAN. PNAN will monitor all of the email flows and it will send you a report when any of those will fail. So you can go inside that platform and authenticate it. In order to review those reports, usually it's very hard. You can set it to be sent to your email address. However, you'll get a lot of them. So you'll need an analyzer. There are free tools out there which you can use to analyze it. Zero Bounce has one. There are other providers which have one. But those are very useful because it will show you exactly the provider where you have problems, so you can authenticate it. When you are confident that everything is being authenticated properly, then you go to P-quarantine and then monitor a little bit and do P-reject eventually. P-reject is the highest and the strictest level. However, is the most, you gain the most positive signals from ISPs by using it. With Microsoft Customer Insights Journey, it's very safe for you to add DMARC if you are only using Microsoft Dynamics CIJ, because it's mandatory in order for you to be able to send any emails from the platform. It's mandatory that you are passing domain authentication, which means SPF, the KIM aligned with your sending domain. So basically, you have a bulletproof authentication, which will pass all of the DMARC checks.
Well said. Yeah, I think, again, this is going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of work and collaboration with IT, but the payoff should be tremendous. So again, start the conversation this week. We've given you some bullet points of what you can bring to that conversation and start getting the ball rolling. Let's go on to the last tip here. So in this last fix, again, maybe a little bit more coordination with IT. So you might not get it done this week, but you can get the ball rolling. I do see this a lot with clients that they use different from names, but the same domain for all of their different emails. So that might be fine if you don't have any transactional emails, but most organizations do. And transactional emails typically have high engagement rates and low complaint rates because these are the emails people anticipate receiving, right? This is the appointment reminder. This is the purchase receipt, that sort of thing. So these emails build a strong sender reputation. However, your marketing emails, even with a healthy list, they can often experience lower engagement and higher complaint rates. So if you have both of those types sharing the same domain, the negative impact spills over and can harm the deliverability of those transactional messages, which are critical.
Absolutely.
So Andy, for anyone in the audience who's thinking this sounds complicated, can you give us a realistic sense of what this actually involves and whether the payoff is worth it?
Separation of email flows. If you are reading any ISP recommendation, you will see this as one of their top recommendation. For example, Gmail is saying very clearly, separate your email flows. You can keep your main domain for transactional purposes and then separate using a subdomain all of those other email flows. And you can do it as granular as you want, meaning that you can do marketing using a subdomain, you can do newsletters using other subdomain, updates using other subdomain, and even reconfirmation, re-engagement using a subdomain in order to separate reputation, because pollution can happen. And you need to think that no one is perfect. So there are a lot of cases of false positives on the filter side, on the receiving side. And if they are tagging your domain as spammy, then every email sent using that domain will be affected. It doesn't matter if it's transactional or not, because that damage is being done on a filter, which is very early on checked, and even before content. So basically, if on the domain reputation you fail, then they will not check the content and say, oh no, this is a transaction email. So even if his domain is bad, we should allow it. No, it doesn't work like this. So your transaction emails will go to the junk or get even rejected or delayed or anything like that. From a configuration point of view, basically, if you are established, you have an established sending program, then it will be a little bit more difficult, because all of these new subdomains needs to be warmed up, because they will be treated as a brand new domain from a volume point of view. Meaning that if you are spiking, for example, if you are setting a marketing subdomain and you are sending usual volumes, then you'll get into trouble. So you'll need to do a warm-up. To do a warm-up, you can be a little bit more aggressive if you are using warm-up services. Warm-up services are dedicated seed lists, which will interact with your emails automatically, and they will give positive signals. In this way, you can be a little more aggressive when you are warming up. Or you can do it organically, and you'll need to set like a warm-up plan where you have defined thresholds for each day you are sending. Again, you can ramp it up faster if your frequency is, for example, daily. Of course, there is a downtime on your marketing plan when you're doing this. The best times is if you are doing every rebranding, or if you are getting in such a big reputation problem, then it makes sense to go and do it and separate your email flows. However, I would recommend everyone to plan it at some point, because it will become more important, especially if you are doing a lot of transactional. If you are using the transactional flow quite heavily, I will recommend you to start as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice, Andy.
As a timeline, it can be done, a warm-up, depending on your volumes, can be done between 14 days to let's say 60 days. You can warm it up. It depends exactly, it's on frequency, especially. Because Gmail is always saying as frequent as you can, send daily if you can, smaller volumes daily, and you can increase it gradually. You can use deliverability consultants as me, or in order for us to create like a custom plan for you guys on how to do it, or plan it together, or anything like that. However, we can do it internally. AI is great these days, so you can use you can use it a little bit, but be careful. Sometimes
it's as not with all AI tools, be careful. AI can make
use AI, but carefully. Yes. Especially if you don't really have any kind of knowledge about it. Double check exactly what they are saying. You need to be a little bit more careful. But this is a very strong recommendation for everyone. because it's coming from the ISP itself, and it will save you a lot of problems in the future. Imagine the saving costs which you will gain when everything is separated, because you will be allowed to make mistakes. Maybe sometimes you do a mistake on your newsletter, but that will not affect your main marketing plan, and it will not affect your ability to send transaction, and it will not affect anything else. And in absence of any data points, your main domain will be used as a standard for the first campaigns you are sending from a new subdomain. So they will rely on the main domain reputation if they don't have any data points. This is why incremental increases and carefully monitoring deliverability data like Google Postmaster, inbox placement test, and so on are very important in this stage of warming up. You need to use multiple tools in order to make sure that you are detecting any problems early on, especially when warming up.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. So again, just to reiterate, like, we know that this isn't something that's going to happen in 1 week, but, to Andy's point, it takes a little bit of time, but that payoff is, super huge. So, I think that's everything for our tips. I did want to go ahead and share some additional resources with you all, and we do have sort of a bonus tip here, if you will. So we've collaborated on an AI era deliverability scorecard, and really what this is a way for you to self-audit your marketing program and see where you are. So it's going to help you identify any areas for opportunity, any gaps. And I think this would be a great first step before choosing which fix you're going to start working on this week. Go ahead, Andy.
And don't be shy to search for deliverability documentation on Microsoft Dynamics knowledge base. I've wrote most of it, and there are great tips on best practices and what to look for, because there are even advices when you are changing platforms, one ESP to another ESP, what to look for, what to get, what to expect. And then there are guides on how to use Google Postmaster, for example, how to interpret bounce errors. There is a lot of data inside. If you cannot find it, just send me an email and I will give you the exact URLs for you to
That's
search.
A wonderful call out.
There is a great knowledge base there.
Yes, it's your knowledge. So, thank you for putting that together so many years ago. So again, wanted to call out the AI deliverability scorecard. You can also learn more about Zero Bounce One and their other products. And then just a quick call out on our Knowledge Hub. We'll be having an upcoming launch, so we'd love for you to learn more about that. And then you can always book a 30-minute consultation with Coffee and Done too.
And it will be available for me as well. So basically, if you want a discussion with me, 30 minutes or so, feel free to reach out. Complimentary, of course. You're a discussion.
Like Adam said, like any questions you have, if you want to try to reach out to Andy, if you want that documentation, just feel free to put your questions in the chat, and then those will come through to us as emails.
Perfect.
It's a great call out. Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you for sticking with us. I know this was a lot of content to take in, but I think it was all very valuable, and we hope that you are leaving this session feeling more informed, empowered, and have an idea of what your next steps can be to really optimize your email deliverability. So thank you.
One last thing, don't be afraid. Be as, let's say, as I said, I have so much respect for marketeers. Do your best to get the attention of your audience. It's really important for your audience to interact with your content. This is the most important signal you can provide, and it will help deliverability, and it will alleviate any kind of problems you might have. Yeah,
great point, Andy. I love it's very true. We both have such respect for marketers. We understand the struggle, and don't be overwhelmed. You have the information now, and you can create a plan. So that's what we want for you guys to walk away with. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you as well.